Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Brand Realisation Innovation panel at the Fuss of Innovation. I am joined today by Christine Wacker, Director of Themed Entertainment at Netflix, and Megan Wastell, Global Creative Director at Merlin Entertainments. Welcome both. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
So I think let's jump right in. And Megan, I will start with you. Merlin has so many well-known brands as part of its portfolio. You've got Lego, Peppa Pig, Ferrari. What are you working on at the moment, and how do you translate such well-known IPs sort of into your experiences?
Yeah. So I've been in my role at Merlin for about 6 months now. And so it's been a very busy time at Merlin. And that means it's been a very busy start to my career at Merlin as well. So specifically looking at partnerships and brands and IPs. So Merlin is really a leading branded entertainment destination company globally in terms of brand partnerships. We have extensive experience bringing all kinds of brands to life. And as you said, Lego, Peppa Pig, but also Sony Pictures Entertainment, Ferrari, Cadbury. I mean, the list really does go on. So in terms of what we have coming down the line, obviously, as I said, there's a really big pipeline, but I'll touch on a few that I can talk about. So 2024, we'll see the first standalone Peppa Pig theme park in continental Europe. So that's set to open next to Legoland Deutschland in time for the brand's 20th anniversary in 2024. And alongside that, we've also broken ground on North America's second Peppa Pig theme park in Dallas. So very exciting stuff for us there. And then sort of closer to home in the UK, we're looking at, in 2024 for Thorpe Park, launching Hyperia, our own IP. So Hyperia will be the UK's fastest and tallest roller coaster, standing at 236 feet, which is just, great new heights for us. Hyperia offers really beautiful, breathtaking views across the park, and also just heart-pounding drops. So that's going to be a big one for us. And also in the UK is the relaunch of Nemesis in Alton Towers. So Nemi is back for 2024. And that's another real heart pounder with a G-force of 3.5 and top speeds of 50 miles per hour. So some really thrilling rides. And then slightly more gentle, we are launching a Legoland Woodland Village. And that's due to open in May next year, located in this lovely meadow just on the outskirts of Legoland Windsor Resort. So that'll be our first themed holiday village, and just a wonderful place to retreat after a really a busy day in the park. So yeah, lots going on for us. As I said, a very, very busy start for me, but all really kind of diverse and exciting, and yeah, lots of different things going on. In terms of your second question, repeat it for me.
So how do you translate these brands sort of into an experience, and how do you sort of choose which brand is going to go in which location?
Yeah, so it's a great question, and we work really hard to understand the market, understand our demographics, and really kind of make sure we've got the right IP, the right partner for the right location. And translating that is all about, for worldwide entertainment, is about really understanding the brands that we partner with. We like to act as an extension to the brands, and we go above and beyond to really immerse ourselves in those brands and be the guardians of the brands. But we also really understand our guests. So we know how these brands are going to translate in different localizations, where to, dial up or dial down certain things to create those really, magical moments that make sense for a localization and make sense for a country. And I'd like to think, joining this team, one thing that I've seen is these teams really understand how to create truly immersive experiences that are 360, and wonderful experiences with great IP. It's a delight, and it makes our job easy to translate those across the world.
Yes, I mean, you're in 25 countries, I think, with Merlin. And so is that sort of the key to translating those brands into those countries, that understanding of your guest?
Yes, we have creatives locally, we have directors locally and operators locally. So there's that kind of real on the ground knowledge, which I think is key, but also understanding research, understanding our guests, and understanding our demographics. So it's pulling on lots of different levers, both local knowledge and research as well.
Fantastic. Christine, Netflix has really very successfully turned your TV IPs into immersive experiences. And you've got the 2 new Netflix house locations opening in the US in 2025. So, how do you translate those TV brands into an experience?
It's an interesting question. I think we're trying to break the mold a little bit and find new ways of telling these stories and these beloved characters. Our approach really has been, you've already seen it on TV. How do we change it and give you a new experience? So whether that be a prequel or it be an alternate storyline or it be something that's somewhat adjacent to the content that you've seen. So if you go to one of our experiences, you really will have this brand new perspective. It won't be something you already know. Also, we find that very valuable for people who don't know the series or the film, that they can walk into the experience. It makes sense to them. They can become a fan, and then they have the pleasure of going back and watching all of the episodes and catching up. So a little bit of a binge time.
Which, everyone enjoys, don't they?
Yes.
Could you tell us a bit more about Netflix House? Because it's going to have retail, F&B, and other experiences as well, isn't it?
Yes, we're still figuring out the model. We don't have all of the details yet, but the Netflix idea is that we bring entertainment to you. So we've never set out to be a destination entertainment venue. We've always wanted to meet people where they are. So this is the first step in doing that and being able to be in local markets and bring new, fresh content into those markets on a regular basis, so people don't feel that they have to travel to go visit these experiences. And then we also want to give them, a full range of F&B and retail and all of those other things that make a night out with your favorite brand really memorable.
And so is the plan then to expand not just across the US, but hopefully globally with these?
Ideally, yes.
Fantastic. And what challenges have you experienced as you're developing this?
The challenges really are figuring out what people want and how they want to experience it. So as we are expanding our traveling experiences that have been pretty successful in the US and in Europe, we're now taking them out to APAC, to LATAM, to the Middle East, and understanding how to localize them from that perspective and what it is that audience expects and how they like to be entertained. Anything from how long their length of stay is, to what they're comfortable paying for a ticket price, to what types of experiences they like to do. Format is important to us, besides the pulsed walkthrough, which is kind of the tried tradition of IP translation. We're looking at theatrical plays with Stranger Things that we just opened in London. We're looking at a gamified experience. So those are different ways that you can tell a story and allow people to be participants. So it's figuring out what everybody wants and then how we deliver that in the best format.
Yeah, so again, as Megan was saying, that research is key, isn't it, to creating
Yeah,
that?
yes, and we rely on it quite heavily.
Yeah. Do you experience any challenges bringing really well-loved TV shows into a different format? Do people kind of get concerned that a character might change or you're expanding on a storyline? Is that difficult?
It can be challenging. I think the more challenging thing is there is beloved shows that just don't translate to experiences. And it's people want to see more of their favorite content, whatever that might be. And sometimes it just falls flat because it's just not meant for experiences. So I think that is the harder challenge than people's concern of how true we will be to the content. It's always been our practice that when we do set out to create an experience, that we work directly with the filmmaker or the content producer to make sure that this falls in line with whatever story they would have written, whether it be a prequel or an adjacent or a retelling. And we stay very true to the characters because those really are at the heart of everything that Netflix is about.
I think that's so important, isn't it? Keeping that story at the heart of the experience.
Yes.
Megan, a lot of the brands that Merlin are working with are quite different. You know, Lego doesn't necessarily have a kind of character that you can bring to life. So how do you work with those sorts of brands and create stories where perhaps there haven't traditionally been stories?
Yeah, well, Lego is an interesting one because, you know, there's lots of brand guidelines there. We have to be very sympathetic to the stories that do exist, because there are storylines that Lego develops for its characters, for its sets. We with Lego are very, very close collaborators, and so creatively we work on the philosophy of co-creation, really. So we'll come up with stories together, we'll work with their writers, and it's really about kind of putting our minds together and working together. And again, being really, really sympathetic and working in close collaboration with the brand. But for me, I come from a writing background. My belief is that, you know, story is the building block of every great experience, you know, beginning, middle, and end, and overcoming things, and, you know, triumph at the end. So yeah, I think that is for me, the building blocks of great stories. And you draw those in from all the IPs, whether they exist or whether you need to co-create it together.
And you mentioned Hyperion, which is your own IP. What is the sort of process for creating a new IP for an attraction?
There's a lot of, you know, it's got its creative foundations, of course. So there's lots of wonderful brainstorms and storytelling and getting creatives in a room with all different areas. But it's also, you know, the science of it, listening to our audience, understanding what our audience wants, listening on social media, sometimes collaborating with our audience, and really relying on testing, relying on insights and data where we have that available to us. So it's a little, you know, magical combination of that kind of spark of creativity alongside all the tools that help us to make sure that, you know, the IP is right and the creative is right for the audience.
And then, Christine, you mentioned that you have some IPs and stories that aren't going to translate well into an experience. How do you work that out? Is that research? Is it just gut instinct? Combination of both?
It's probably a combination of both. A great example is Jeffrey Dahmer. That was one of our top shows last year. And it was beloved and everybody wanted more and wanted to dive deeper. It just, you know, really doesn't make a great experience outside of maybe an exhibit that probably has been done and could be a little bit gory and scary to people. So I think when, you know, we have such a diverse portfolio of the types of contents that we air on our service, and documentaries happen to be one of the greats. And sometimes it just needs to stay there in that place. And, we look at what's trending in LBE and, is there any formats that would lend themselves to it? What is the audience really asking for? Was it a zeitgeist moment, or is there really more to tell? Is the story finished is a great way of saying it. So I guess it is research and gut, but it's, our professional experience that leads us into knowing which ones are going to be the more successful, and there's more of an audience that's hungry for that additional layer of content.
It must be really difficult to make that decision that, no, this story is done, because I know when you're a fan of something, you always want more story, but actually
Yes.
There does come a point where you go, no, we have to leave it alone now. We aren't adding anything extra here. That's quite a brave decision to make for you.
Really, it's, you can torture something. And, I think we learn it from filmmakers and, content producers. They have to end a series or a film because that's all there is to say. And we want to leave you with wanting more versus I've had enough.
Yeah, it's a very fine line, isn't it?
Yes.
So if we just move kind of a bit broader now and look at some trends that you're seeing within this sort of brand realization experiences. Megan, what trends are you seeing?
Gosh, okay. Well, I think we can't talk about trends in 2023, 2024 without looking at AI. That sort of is the thing of the moment, isn't it? And I suppose the thing of the future. So we're looking at that really closely because AI has so many different applications and so many different opportunities for innovation. Just at Merlin at the moment, we're using we're on the pilot program for Microsoft Copilot, and using that as a way to supercharge our productivity with AI, which is really interesting to make it part of your workflows. So I think we'll be looking a lot at how AI becomes a part of workflows, and I think we'll see that as a trend, everywhere across the industry. But AI is going to touch every part of the experience, right? And every part of for us, in-park guest experience. So looking at AR and wayfinders, using wearables, responsive automated guides for parks, virtual assistants for booking tickets and queues and ordering food and drink. So I think there's just so much application for it. And we're really just touching the surface of where the opportunities are. But in terms of consumer-facing trends for attractions, I personally am really interested in the intersection of real worlds and virtual worlds. Mm-hmm. And I saw a little bit of that in the panel that we were judging. Some really nice intersections there of kind of how do those two worlds go in conversation with one another, and how do you move seamlessly between them? And that's something that I really enjoy thinking about, and I think the team does as well. So I think that will continue to be a trend. But I would also say, innovation doesn't need to come solely from the tech space. It doesn't need to just be all of the, AI and digital. It's exciting and compelling, and, it's a real inspiration and driver for me. But there are new formats and innovation that can be done in, experiences and entertainment. And there's so much more to discover that isn't necessarily rooted in tech. And that really excites me as well.
Definitely. And when you talk about sort of, the guest innovation in terms of, wearables and, potentially having AI interface and things like that, are there opportunities to bring branded experiences into that aspect of a guest's journey? So, could a character be leading you through a park maybe? Do you think that could perhaps be a way that people go?
Yes, I think it's interesting because you've got on the one side brands which have guidelines, they have rules, they have guardrails, and you have, AI and technology, which, you want to make sure that you get the parameters right, but it's sort of, building in this walled garden, building in a safe space for brands so that any AI that you used is used in the right way for the brand. So I think there's so much opportunity for it. Absolutely. For characters, for interactivity, for conversational types of experience. Absolutely. But it's just, making sure that tech works hard for the brand experience as well.
Absolutely. And Christine, what trends are you seeing in the space?
I think, certainly just to kind of piggyback onto Megan, I agree with all the new technology is very exciting, and it's even difficult to keep up with it. What I find really cool and innovative, and saw a lot in a lot of the entries that were part of this awards, is when you don't even know what the technology is, when the technology is at service of the story versus being a showcase for the technology, which I think for so many years we saw it was really about the technology, and it was the use of projection mapping, or it was the use of hand gestures, or it was this use, and then they try to tell a story around using that technology. Now you almost don't even notice what it is, and it's really part of transporting you to a different time and place. And I think the immersive screens and LED coming back in a different way, where we're projecting sound through it, to make you feel like you forget where you are and that you're going somewhere else. And that's the innovation that I think will continue, where we don't care so much of how it's done. We just love the end result.
It's fantastic escapism, isn't it? These
Yes.
Immersive experiences. And when you can escape somewhere with a brand or a character that you already love, or you come to love because of the experience, it's a really exciting thing to be able to offer people, isn't it?
Exactly. And have them focus on that, and get back to the storytelling and the magic of it.
Absolutely. And so where do you both see the future of these kind of IP experiences going? Megan, I'll go to you first.
Oh my gosh. I think, the sky's the limit. things are moving so rapidly. I think at this point we're only hampered by our own imaginations. At Merlin, we're working with a lot of, as I said, really exciting IP owners to bring brands to life and just keep growing and growing. So, for us, we're looking at cities, we're looking at midway clusters, bringing IP into these clusters in gateway cities and growing them and continue to expand our footprint. In Legoland, we've got, massive expansion there, 10 globally with parks coming in China, the first being in Shanghai. But I think, there's so many opportunities, parades, seasonal events, accommodations, and it's really about scale, right? So the opportunity for scale is interesting. But as Christine said, I think we just need to be careful that all of these opportunities for innovation, all of these platforms, all of these experiences are always in service to the storytelling and in service to kind of the guest first kind of experience of an attraction.
And Christine, where do you see the future going?
I think that something that actually Merlin does well as Netflix is meeting people where they are. And what I see is making it far more accessible for people to have more regular experiences, where traditionally 20 years ago, you had to plan a big family vacation and it was a week out of your life that you went to have this escapism. But what I'm seeing now is we're reaching people in every single market with every different price point, with every different kind of experience. So it becomes part of their regular share of couch almost, where they're thinking what they're going to do on the weekend. And there's going to be things there that are our interest and places where they can repeat visit time and time again. And as we, as creators of these experiences, start to look at what the future is, I think we really need to be cognizant of that and making sure that we are thinking of everybody who wants to enjoy it and not just those select few that are able to pilgrimage to, wherever they might be located.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that was something everyone noticed as a result of the pandemic, wasn't it? That actually when people couldn't travel, they went to their regional park. They kind of stayed much more locally. And I think how great if everyone can start bringing world-class experiences to those people. It's more sustainable. People don't have to travel as far, but also just kind of gives everyone that opportunity to experience it. Christine, how would you then kind of ensure that it has that repeatability element to it?
Well, I think there's a couple of ways. First, in the product that we're making with the Netflix house and our traveling experiences, where we rotate experiences in market and they're there for a limited time, almost like a movie. So, it's in, then it's out, and you get to experience it, and then something new will be there. But I think it's also in the way that we design experiences. Squid Game, which is about to open for us, Squid Game, the Trials. It is a very gamified experience where you get points and there's a winner at the end of it. And there's a way that you can actually repeat it and get better and get higher and get a different experience. And so instead of just telling a straight line narrative, it's about how can the people influence what that actual story is. And every time they go get a different result, I think then people will want to do it again and again and again. That's what we're seeing in the gamification world.
So you give them some agency within the storytelling.
Exactly. And they have a direct effect on the outcome.
Fantastic. And I think as well, one trend I'm sort of seeing is this expansion of the maybe more traditional kind of visitor attraction space being, a theme park, into lots of different spaces, whether that's retail, food and beverage. And I think, Christine, what Netflix is doing, especially with Netflix houses, you're really kind of pushing into these other areas quite a lot, aren't you?
Absolutely. And I think we had some early learnings when we did Stranger Things experience that's been out for a couple of years now. What we learned from guest experiences and their feedback was they loved the narrative and they loved to participate. It was very interactive and had all of those elements that they were hoping for. But at the end, we had this really great area. We called it mixtape, and it was retail dining and a little bit of entertainment. And they would spend an hour to 2 hours just having the food that they saw on the show and different, shopping experiences with a lot of photo ops. And then there was a bar that allowed them to be, hanging out and just absorbing the culture versus just, okay, now it's over and I'm on to the next thing. So I think that we're expanding a little bit more into that world, and how do we allow people just to enjoy it and just hang versus constantly giving them this strong narrative entertainment.
It's nice to offer people both sides, isn't it? Rather than just kicking them straight out into the world and going,
Exactly.
have a good experience, now leave.
Yes,
Keep
it's
them there
it's
a
the
bit
new
longer.
it's the new exit retail.
Absolutely. And Megan, I think Merlin is sort of, you've had themed restaurants and themed food and beverage in your parks and things, but is that something that you're really expanding on, or does it vary a bit by location and by brand?
Yeah, we're thinking a lot about F&B and commercial. We've just appointed somebody in my team actually to focus entirely on the F&B side. So it's something we really want to get right. I mean, experience design touches every sense, right? And so food and beverage and kind of that sense is a big part of the experience, and it's a big, retail opportunity as well. And it increases dwell time, increases engagement, and if people can have just one more wonderful sensual experience, during their day, it's a fantastic thing. So yeah, absolutely, it's key to what we're looking at.
And for anyone watching who is either planning to bring an IP into their own kind of resort or into an attraction they're designing, what advice would you give them as to how to successfully kind of bring that IP into an experience? Megan, I'll start with you.
Well, I think if you're working with third-party IPs, if you're working with other IPs, the key is co-creation, co-collaboration, understanding that IP, but also understanding the audience for that IP and what it is that they absolutely love. IPs are about passion, they're about fandom, and if people are coming to engage with that IP, they're looking for a truly authentic experience, and you've got to get it right. So I think the key is all about collaboration there. That's the best way to get it right.
And if you're kind of creating your own IP for an experience, do you have any advice?
Yes. I mean, for your own IP, it's around, as I said, I'm a big believer in storytelling. So it's understanding the story that you're creating, because IP at the end of the day is content, right? So it's got to have a compelling story, compelling characters, and opportunities for, in experience design, opportunities for the audience to engage and have their role in that story. So I think that's a really interesting consideration. And again, the other thing is, if you have the means, if you're able to, test it on any sample group that you can, get feedback, develop, grow, adjust your thinking, adjust your IP based on the feedback that you get from your key audience.
It's really important. Christine, What advice would you give to people?
I think, I definitely agree with Megan 100%. And I would only add that you're going deep enough. I think we've come from a time when there was a lot of graphic and just label insertion into an experience to try to make it feel like it was a story. But it's really getting down to all of those layers and making sure that you are doing justice to it. And then, leaving them with something new. So if you can go through it and there was elements of surprise, things that maybe are new to you, maybe an introduction of some new element to that IP, so that people feel like they've gotten something additional out of it versus just a memory.
Absolutely. And you spoke earlier about sort of adding gamification to some of your experiences. What advice would you give, Christine, to people who want to add that into their own experiences?
I think it's hard. Gamification can be very difficult because there is this element of, wanting to score everything and collect points and use this technology. But sometimes that's not in service of the story. So if you want a gamified experience, you really have to start with an IP or a story that is about gamification. I think when you try to gamify something that, is much more of a passive IP or story, it feels contrived. So I think, our example with Squid Games was the whole series was about a game. There was one winner, everybody else died. Well, we're not going to kill people, but there's a way that we can do point scoring so that you understand where you would have been had you been in that show. So I think it's really making sure that you're marrying the right IP with the right technology to tell the story that people want to hear.
Megan, Merlin is working with Immersive Gamebox, aren't you, on some venues in Australia and Germany, and hopefully more to come. So how do you sort of bring a kind of well-known experience on its own into kind of the Merlin sort of branding as well?
For Immersive Gamebox, yeah. So we have partnered with them exclusively to expand their offering. And actually, they already work with Netflix on Squid Games, as you said, and Sony Pictures Entertainment on Ghostbusters. So, it's that next extension of watching entertainment, experiencing it through play with friends and family. Yeah, so it's just all about taking that story and just extending it on. And Immersive Gamebox is just a wonderful partner for us to do that with. This is Merlin's first move into digital gaming, but I think it's very Merlin because it's getting people away from their couch, away from their screens, and having a fun experience together. So it's a high growth area in a really innovative, creative adjacency for us.
And it's about finding that right partner, isn't it, if you're going to move into something like that?
Oh, yes. Well, yeah, as Christine said, it's really about taking stories that make sense for gamification and not just kind of bolting things on. It has to make sense. And if it doesn't, it won't feel right to the consumer. It won't feel right to the guest.
Consumers are smart, aren't they? They will notice if you're shoehorning technology and if you're shoehorning story.
They sure will.
And they'll tell you. Social media is the best and worst thing.
Absolutely. And so just as we sort of come to the end of the session, what is the biggest challenge that you're facing at the moment in your business, Megan?
The challenge for us, but also the opportunity, I think, is our competitive set. So we're not just competing with other live events for guests. We're up against the likes of Netflix and cinema and sports and pop-ups and social media. And that's why it's so helpful for us to partner with people like Immersive Gamebox or, any of these big IPs to really, help us supercharge our experiences. So yeah, it's a great opportunity, but also, a little bit of a challenge as well.
Christine, what's the biggest challenge you're facing?
I think it's innovation, which is very difficult. We're all moving very fast. Technology is happening at every second, and there are a lot of really smart, talented people that are coming up with new ideas, both on the IP front and studio front, but also, really independent thinkers who really have these new ideas of how people want to be entertained. And staying ahead of that when you have planning cycles that are like 24 months from idea to opening is really tough, because what you thought was going to be great 2 years ago is completely outdated by the time you went open. So I really applaud people who can stay ahead of the curve, who can introduce a new idea, who can push the boundaries and really help us all be smarter and cooler than we have been in the past.
And do you have any sort of advice or tips for how you can stay ahead of that curve?
I think it's being nimble. It's being involved in the industry, having great conversations. It's like this whole shared API that the digital world has been doing forever. I think we need to do that amongst ourselves and really applaud what's great and not be afraid to have somebody else build upon it.
And I suppose as well, knowing your audience as well, if you know them.
Exactly. I mean, innovation is only as good as the story. So it all comes back to the great story. Without that, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah. Well, this has been so fantastic. Thank you both. I think you're both just at such an interesting point, and I'm so excited to see everything that comes out of Netflix and Merlin in the next couple of years. I think it's all going to be really interesting. So thank you so much for being on the panel. Thank you to everyone watching as well. And we are going to announce the winners of the Brand Realisation Innovation Awards next. So do stay tuned and see who has won those, and then go visit their virtual booth as well. So Meg and Christine, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And now, the winners of the Brand Realisation Innovation Awards 2023. Third place, Warner Brothers Studio Tour Tokyo, The Making of Harry Potter from Thinkwell, a Take Company. Second place, Warner Brothers Studio Tour Tokyo, The Making of Harry Potter Retail and Restaurants from Lumsden. And first place, Peaky Blinders The Rise from the Everywhere Group. Congratulations to all of the winners.